thank whatever gods may be that I have finally made it.
Yeah, so today I decided, let's just get
You must have had no one else.
let's just get to know Van, right?
Well, thank you so much.
And so no disrespect, audience, that I call him Van. We have known each other for years. We met many, many years ago through the National Forum for Black Public Administrators.
That's right.
When you were on the city council, you weren't even a mayor.
That's right. No, before I was on city council.
Oh, you weren't even on city council back then.
No.
Wow. So kind of tell us a little bit about Van. I know you grew up in New York, but tell me what that was like. And then how did you get to Savannah from New York?
I know, it's strange, right?
Right.
Life has a way of lifing. Born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, very proud of my Brooklyn roots, to a phenomenal mother and recently deceased dad. Had the opportunity to graduate in a very diverse and live a very diverse environment. Went to Savannah. My father is from Savannah, and I went to the Savannah State College at the time to matriculate. And that was one of those turning points in my life, because if I don't go to Savannah, none of this happens today.
Wow.
And so I end up in Savannah, graduated with a degree in business administration, went back to Brooklyn, ready to get the job and live my best life, and couldn't get a job. I couldn't figure out why. So I go back to Savannah. I go to grad school at Georgia Southern and then Savannah State, got a master's degree. And I'm 22 at this point. Go back to New York, still couldn't get a job. So I went back down to Savannah and eventually started working in law enforcement, later in human resources, and eventually got elected. And now I'm married.
Wow. Okay, so let's go back to Brooklyn and growing up, right? So what did your parents do for a living?
So my father was in law enforcement, and then he became a general contractor. My mother was a nurse for over 20 years, and then she went back to school. And we were in school at the same time. She went back to school and became a licensed social worker. So I've always had, not only a law enforcement presence in my life, but also a very strong social service presence in my life. I had parents that, they didn't play. They cut my behind.
Right. Yeah. Now, are you an only child?
No, I'm the oldest of five.
Oh, you're the oldest?
I'm the oldest of five.
And
I have three. It was myself, then three sisters, and then a younger brother.
Okay. So then I heard that you graduated from high school at 16.
I did.
So you're on an accelerated program. You graduated at 16.
Which I don't know if that was really a good idea. It sounded like one at the time. In New York, they were skipping people. So I skipped the 8th grade. So I went from 7th to 9th grade. So they loaded us up in 7th grade and then loaded us up in 9th grade. And so we skipped the 8th grade. So I graduated, 1 to 2 years younger than my classmates.
I did the skip earlier on. I skipped kindergarten and went to the 1st grade in
right.
5. So, okay. So looking back, was that a good idea?
1st grade 4, tell the truth.
No.
You're valedictorian of yourself.
So if you had to do it all over again, would you skip the grade?
No.
What do you think you missed?
I missed a year. I think, in a way, my academics were, my maturity was not.
Okay.
And so here I was playing off. I mean, it's not until years later that my classmates didn't realize that I was way younger than they were, because, we're going out. My mother's like, you're 16 years old. You're not going up. I'm a high school senior.
Right.
And so here I am just kind of, playing. I think sometimes, you have to let your maturity catch up. And so for me, when I attended Savannah State, I started at Savannah State at 16 years old. I became freshman class president at Savannah State at 16 years old. And so in a way, I was running a little too fast. I think had I had the chance to really think about it, I would have just kind of slowed it down a little bit.
Did you even have a driver's license?
No. No. Well, in New York, nobody had a driver's license at 16. I don't think I had one in Savannah until I was about 18. I didn't have a car to make a difference.
Wow. See, I got my driver's license at 15.
See?
All right. So you're 16. What made you even run for freshman president?
Oh, because I was always student government. That was my thing, student government. And so I came down, and in Savannah, it was this whole thing that Atlanta kids were running Savannah State. And so I was a part of a group of kids from New York that came down. I was like, yo, this, I was a little, not as dignified as I am now. I was a little bit, a little rougher around the edges, and
A little
so
bit more Brooklyn.
a lot more Brooklyn,
Okay.
a lot more Brooklyn.
Okay.
And so, he used to call us crabs. And we're like, we're not going to be no crabs. That's not what we're going to do. And so, we just kind of took over and changed that that kind of mindset about freshmen.
So what year did you pledge?
Well, I pledged a fraternity called Delta Sigma Pi. It was a business fraternity in 1987. So I think that was about 2 years. I tried for Alpha the first time, and for some reason it didn't work. Well, I know the reason, but I can't really say it. I'll just say this. Don't talk trash to fraternities you want to pledge later on, right? And so it didn't work. So, I was on me. And then 2 years later, I tried again. And something happened again, dealing with them, some issue, and they didn't have the line. So it didn't happen. And so I wanted to be alpha, man. So I tried again a year and a half later, and it happened. So
wow.
I was serious about that alpha life.
Okay. Okay. So
Most alpha men are.
So no regrets pledging alpha.
Well, excuse me? Is there another fraternity anywhere? I mean, just not far from here, there's an alpha man that has a monument.
Oh, wow.
I don't, yeah. You might have heard of him.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Okay. Okay. So now you make it to local government.
Yeah.
So how'd you get to local government?
Well, I worked in county government. So I started off as a police officer. And so I was a police officer, and then I transitioned into a reserve sheriff's deputy. At the same time, I started in human resources. And so I worked and actually retired from working in human resources, retired as an assistant human resources director. And so, local government has always been in my blood.
How long were you a police officer?
Actively about 2 years, and then as a reservist for almost 20.
You didn't want to get shot at?
No. But you know what? In a way, it wasn't necessarily about that. For me, it was about, I remember distinctly growing up in Brooklyn, and, sometimes we would run in with the police and they would have us laying on the street, laying with our heads down on the ground. And we still don't know why.
Right.
And so you don't change a system sometimes unless you're able to get in the system and it's create change from inside. So for me, it was really about humanizing it and being a part of that system. And so there are some people I still run into today who come up to me and say, hey, you remember me? You arrested me. And, but they'll say, I treated them nice. I treated them with respect. I don't remember them. But the fact was hopefully it was a positive experience.
Okay. So then you get to city council. What made you run for city council?
I was doing I was writing a weekly editorial. I was on the radio. I was doing a radio show every week. And at some point, you got to stop complaining about stuff and just do it. So an opportunity came up, and people were like, why don't you do it? I said, Dad. And so I ran against an incumbent, which you don't do in Savannah. And you're from out of town and you don't run against someone who's been there. And so I did, and I won. And then, 4 elections later, I ran for mayor.
And when you ran for mayor, did you run against that incumbent again?
I did run against that incumbent.
Wow.
I go hard in these streets, man.
You went all the way to Brooklyn?
All the way.
So what was your lesson learned from going from city council to mayor? Because I think, a lot of our mayors now are coming from grassroots. They, they're activists and all this, and they jump from not even being on city council, know nothing about city government, and then they become the mayor, right?
Right. You're right.
They're doing it. And so is there a learning curve there? It
is absolutely a learning curve. And if I just got reelected, so obviously I think I've been successful to a degree. Okay. But there was such a learning curve. And you jump in here and say, I think the most important thing is you get in there and find out all the stuff you don't have control over. It's easy when you're on Facebook. They should do this and you should do this. It's too hot. People call my house, Man Johnson, you need to bring Brittany Griner home. What? But things they think that we have control over. Our rents are too damn high. Well, we don't control that. You need to do something about these shootings. And so I think understanding, first of all, what your limitations are, understanding how budgets are constructed and how budgets are formulated. All the stuff you want to pay for has to be paid for, and it's coming out the same pot of money. Understanding what prioritization is and how important strategic and long-term planning is. Um, Understanding that you have to work with different people because, although you're the only person in your echo chamber, when you're a mayor, you have everybody and you have to be able to consider it. And then you have people advocating. And so how do you do that in an equitable way? How do you do it in a fair way? How do you do it in an principled way that makes sense? So a lot of people who jump from the activists to the mayor get in there, they care about that one thing, but there are 99 other things you have to be caring about as well.
So talk about how you get elected when you're running. You only see the people, for the most part, that are on your team, rallying for you, calling your name, chanting. Then when you become mayor, you get to be the mayor for the people that didn't vote for you. How do you deal with the people that didn't vote for you?
A lot of prayer. There's a difference between campaigning and governing.
Mhm.
And so when you transition, you become, like you said, you become the mayor of people who don't like you. And they feel that they could say what they want to say to you and they could just treat you how they want to treat you. And you have to be able to still serve them, even though they're talking trash about you. It takes thick and thin skin, and it takes a level of maturity that, alma mayors I see across the country. I look sometimes and I'm like, oh, but yet they're cool and they just ride it on by and they see the bigger picture. And I think that's really important.
Wow. So after you joined AAMA, you can tell the story about how heavily recruited you, Mayor Johnson, to become a member of AAMA. But after joining, what has it actually meant to you?
I remember the day Phyllis said, I asked for one of these AAMA pens. I'm wearing it right now very proudly. Y'all should see this. And I remember I said, well, can I get one of AAMA pens? I mean, I'm an African-American mayor. And my good friend of all of these years, Phyllis Dickerson, said, no, you're not a member. And so I had to join AAMA. And she said, here, take my hand. I will lead you to places. So I said, all right, I'll do that. Well, for me, it's really about being able to not only operate with some of the best public administrators of our time. I mean, leading in all types of ways, but they happen to look like me. And they understand very clearly the challenges that we all go through. And I mean, I think that's been the interesting issue for me, is that every day I live at the intersection of of white fear and Black expectation every
Wow.
day. And it is a difficult place to navigate. And so when I get together with AAMA mayors, um, you have people who understand that space, that you're the only mayor in your city. And so, you have friendly fire and then you have fire. And, depending on where it is, someone's always mean to you. Somebody's always not understanding or really caring. And then you have folks that are praying for you, but you have folks here to understand. And so for me, it's been able to be a part of a greater good, being able to say that we care about everybody. But we also recognize that there are people of color, people who are Black and brown that have very specific issues that we are best qualified to speak on. And so I've just been glad to be with mayors that are doing those types of things. And, these are my hero mayors across the country. I'm, sneaking in, seeing what they're doing. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's pretty dope.
Wow. Wow. So, some people say that expectation is different for Black mayors than mayors of other ethnicities. So, what is the difference and why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's different for mayors of color.
Mhm.
And, and it's not fair. But I mean, we don't cry about what's not fair. You live with it. Because I think sometimes Black folks expect me to solve all Black problems from 1619 on. And it is really unrealistic, but they think, oh, you should do that. And then when we're making decisions, I mean, I'm not the Black mayor of Savannah. I am the mayor of Savannah, Georgia.
Right.
And that's for everybody. And so, although I want to make sure that we are talking about equitable ways of doing business, for me, it's about green. It's about making sure that Savannah is a safe, environmentally healthy, and economically thriving community for all of its citizens. So how do we get to that all? And how do we make sure we bring people to the table? How do we make sure voices that have never been heard are heard? How do we make sure those who have not been seen are seen? And so for me, it's a constant. And then unfortunately to some, it's never enough.
Right.
You give your best and, you should be doing more. You should be doing more. All right. You provided 150 units of affordable housing. Why not 151?
Right.
And you just have to recognize that you do the best you can while you're on the field, and, haters gonna hate.
So when I was mayor's chief of staff, the worst thing that happened to me was a constituent decided to yell at me. As you probably know, it didn't go well. Didn't go well. And I said, I was like, I don't think you know who you're talking to.
That's not
So it was
exactly
one of
how
those
you
kind of
said it.
conversations.
That's probably not how you said it.
So what's the worst thing that has happened to you since you've been an elected official? We saw Greg Fisher get hit. We saw Eric Adams get cussed out on the airplane. So what is the worst thing that you felt like you were taken back, like you were caught off guard?
Been a couple. So one was one night, a young lady and some folks showed up at my house, and they had bullhorns at midnight, and they just started going off on the bullhorns. And so I wanted to deal with it. And the police came over and they dealt with it, asked them to leave. They didn't leave. So they visited out of jail. I've been threatened to the point where the FBI has gotten involved and a person is in custody. I have times where on social media, people call me names and then I forget, who I am. And I'm like, well, I'm here at 2 East Bay Street. And if you want to come, I'll come downstairs. And you tell me that in my face.
So it's tough.
It's tough. I mean, because just because I wear a moniker of mayor doesn't mean I lose my humanity.
Right.
You're not going to talk about my mama. I mean, I'm sorry. You're just not going to talk about my mama. And so if you call me a son of a bee, I mean, that rings up something in me that, I just may not be able to, as they say in Brooklyn, on everything I love.
Wow.
On everything I love.
I'm about to get a T-shirt with that on.
On everything I love. See, you will get a T-shirt.
I know. I will get a T-shirt that says
everything I love.
Wow. So in this part of the conversation, let's turn it a little bit because I think this is where we're going. We are recording this 48 hours after there has been an attempt on former President Trump's life, unfortunately. And so where is our democracy right now? Like, where do you think this is going?
I've been thinking, and the song that's been resonating in my head over the last couple of days has been Marvin Gaye, What's Going On? I mean, this is America. And although, personally, I might disagree with President Trump's views and viewpoints, the fact is he has the right to be able to express them. Mm-hmm. And he still has my respect as a former president of this country by virtue of that position. And so here in America, we are talking about assassination attempts on presidents. I mean, where they do that at? And so I'm concerned because I think although there are opportunities to try to bring people together, it's also pushed the fringes into corners further. Yeah. And so I'm hearing conspiracy theories and all of these things back and forth. And so I'm really, really concerned. The Republican convention begins this week. The Democratic convention, of which I'm a delegate, is next month. I mean, where do we go from here? And what happens in November? And what happens the day after November? So it's a very, very scary time to be in government right now. And it's a very scary time because, will our republic be able to stand up to the internal threats? We've always done well with external threats, but what do we do internally?
Right. I know you've been around me with President Biden. We've been in the same space with President Clinton. I introduced you to him. I'm a former old advanced lead. So, when they showed the video footage, I was looking at the site, the build out, everything, like right. What went wrong, right? And so as we start to look forward into the new year, win or lose, whoever wins or loses, what's your wish for 2025? Like as we start to go into this election year, we move into 2025. Like what are we wishing for as it relates to our democracy?
My biggest wish would be that we find our North Star. Before we are Republicans, before we are Democrats, we are Americans. And we are a country that was founded on struggle, but also founded on the basis that people have a right to be and a right to exist. And I have a right to disagree. I have a right to respectfully express my disagreement. And you have the right to disagree with me. And at the end of the day, the rules are win or lose, we win or we lose. I mean, I'm a Knicks fan. And so for years, we did a lot of losing, and so I'm sitting here, my friends, messing with me about that. But then, we won. All right, we won. I mean, I knew my day would come again, but it was never, ever personal. And so I'm hoping that at the end of the day that we recognize that government for all of us is better than government for a few of us. And so I'm just hoping, that God prevails, that peace of God prevails. That if we're one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, that we will put that into practice instead of mere words.
Wow. I like that. I like that. Because I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Yes, you did.
And we have red sometimes, and sometimes we have blue. But what I will say, we play in the sandbox together very well. I graduated from Little Rock Central. I have my friends are Republicans, the other half are Democrats. So,
your picture is hanging in there.
Right. And so we pick up the phone and we're like, okay, we disagreed on this one. Let's go. You ready to go to lunch?
Right.
Like we learn how to play in the sandbox together. So that's my wish, is that we learn how to play better in the sandbox together. So we didn't cover one thing about you, which is you being able to play the piano.
Yeah.
I remember the day I found out. I was at an NLC conference and the lady sitting next to me was from your city. I think she was on your city council. And I asked her if you know band. And she was like, yeah, he plays the piano at church. And I was like, band plays the piano. So how did you learn? Did your mom make you take piano lessons? Like, how did that come up?
I don't really know. I think I've always had an interest in music, and my mother had this organ that she bought that was in the corner that I used to just bang on. And I just always had an interest in music. One of my favorite uncles, was a self-taught bass player. He recently passed away, but he ended up, going from Brooklyn to being the musical director for Phyllis Hyman. And was her last musical director. And so I went to a performing arts high school, and you just around great musicians and knowing them and seeing them. And then you go to the church. And as in church, if you go say, you better learn how to play. Because people will get up there and say, take all mistakes for love, and then they're going to give you all the mistakes. So you better be able to improvise. And so for me, it's always been a love. I've always considered it a gift. And I still play, most Sundays. I'm not going to always be the mayor, and I just think that you have to give your reasonable service. And so I still play for weddings from time to time, and, sometimes top 40 stuff, and not often anymore. And it's something I enjoy to do. It's a creative space for me. And so it's a way of expression.
So you said you're not going to always be the mayor. So what's next? After being mayor, what's next for Van Johnson?
You mean when I call Phyllis and she don't return my phone calls because I'm not a member of AAMA? No, hello. Please leave your name and number. We'll call you back. Yeah, I know. I don't know. I enjoy public speaking. I see a lot of former mayors consulting. I've always tried to really make sure for me that I don't get too caught up in the mayor thing, because I see how the world treats ex-mayors. I've seen it in literally within months. Somebody's in office, hey man, how you doing? Good, let's go to lunch. And then, a couple of months later, like, you better go pay for your own lunch. And so I've always tried not to do that, and then be able to have. I mean, I think I could still go back in human resources. I could always go back in to some form of law enforcement. I can go into political consulting. I think for me, it's an opportunity to just be able to live life and go outside, so to speak, and live my best life. This is a very draining type of profession. And so I want to see some places I haven't seen before. I want to turn up and not people say, hey, you don't have to man Savannah right there turning up. I'm like, it's the X-Man Savannah turning up. And just be able to enjoy. And then, I mean, as a person of faith, wherever the Lord leads me is where, I'll go and, and just keep living. Hopefully it won't be the end of my service. Maybe when you get called to DC, maybe you give me a job somewhere. I won't have to work that hard.
So is there a wife or kids in the future?
Well, right now, my wife's name is Savannah. She's a jealous. She's jealous. She wants all my time. But I mean, probably now, I mean, after that, he's like, oh, I'm wide open then. So, and I mean, you're never too old to have kids.
Okay. All right.
I might be their granddaddy, but,
All right. So thanks everyone for joining us today for Our Mayors Breaking It Down. Thank you, Mayor Van Johnson, for hanging out with me for a little while today.
I finally got on. I mean, you must have had no one else to speak to. It's just like, somebody must have canceled out on you or something like that. I mean, and said, all right, I'll just go ahead and go to him. Hey, whatever the reason, I'm just glad for my name to be called.
Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you again for joining us today with Our Mayors Breaking It Down.